Amen. Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 12 says, the hearing ear, the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. We mentioned last week how that the ear and the eye are marvels of engineering, how that it shows forth a creator. And what I neglected to point out last week that I'm going to today is God blessed us with eyes and ears that we are to use them to glorify Him, to use them to do the things that are pleasing in His sight. Since God is the one who made them both, the eyes and the ears should not be used for selfish reasons. Well, our eyes should be set upon things that are good and wholesome. Our eyes should read and study God's Word. Our eyes should be set upon things that are righteous. And so for our ears as well, our hearing, we should listen to that which is good, that which is productive, and not listen to that which is contrary to the will of God. And our eyes and our ears, sometimes that which God blesses us with, we can sometimes misuse those things by some of the things we might watch on television, on movies, and put before our eyes, put in the hearing of our ears. So we need to understand that God has blessed us with these wonderful things, eyes and ears, and they should not be used for evil. They should be used to glorify Him. Look at verse 13. Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will be satisfied with bread. We discussed this last week, how that's talking about laziness. Don't love laziness. He's not talking about sleep per se, but the concept of being lazy and sleeping in laziness. If you do that, you'll come to poverty. You open your eyes and get busy. You be diligent, and you will be satisfied with bread. Verse 14, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 14. It is good for nothing, cries the buyer, but when he has gone his way, then he boasts. This refers to the buyer who haggles over a price of something, says that it is worthless, then walks away and brags about getting a bargain. The haggling process here, of which someone cries, this is good for nothing. And so the attitude here is this of a person who is trying to buy something for what it really, for less than what it really is worth. And that should not be the attitude of people. We should pay what something is worth, but to go about boasting or bragging that you got a good deal on something that you've actually cheated the seller out of what you should have paid him or her, is something that is contrary to the will of God. So to say something is worthless or is good for nothing when it really has a value to it, and then go away boasting about how much that you saved on that item, shows a dishonesty about the individual. There's nothing wrong with getting something at a sale price, but haggling is something that was done in the ancient cultures, even today in third world cultures. You go to the marketplace, you can haggle for the value of something, and if a person goes and sees something they really want, and they get the price down to where you're just basically stealing it from the seller, then go away boasting about it. That's not the proper attitude to have. So that's basically the point of verse 14. Any questions or comments about that? We should have a proper attitude about how we handle our business, is basically what he's saying. Verse 15, there is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Again, the value of knowledgeable speech is being set forth here, being more valuable than gold and rubies. What we say if our lips are speaking words of knowledge, that is more precious than any amount of gold or rubies that a person might accumulate. Verse 16 is a rather difficult proverb. Take the garment of one who is surety for a stranger, and hold it as a pledge when it is for a seductress. One paraphrase of this proverb says, be sure to get collateral from anyone who guarantees the debt of a stranger. Get a deposit if someone guarantees the debt of a foreigner. So the concept of take the garment of one who is a surety for a stranger. The process of getting something or something for collateral for a guarantee is what you find here in verse 16. Any comments on this one? It's a rather difficult one that I had to do a lot of studying on, and it's kind of a difficult proverb to try to explain. But the concept here is of collateral and debt. Verse 17, bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth will be filled with gravel. Now, of course, he's talking symbolically. It's literally not going to have gravel in the mouth. He's talking about how that when a man uses deceit or dishonesty to gain bread or something, it's a sweet victory to them at first. But then if they have a conscience, it's going to bother them later on. And of course, gravel in the mouth is something that's not pleasant. It's not something that is to be desired. And it's the concept of sowing and reaping here. It might seem sweet at first to gain bread or something through deceit, but there are consequences that must be faced in that activity. Sin, or to do something dishonestly, has a short-lived victory to it. A short-lived victory. Think about the person who steals. They go to the store and they shoplift, they steal something. And they feel really good about getting away with it. But then there are consequences. Gravel in the mouth. There's going to be consequences, whether it be their conscience or whether certainly it will be punishment for stealing that item. And it seems sweet at the time, but then that carries problems with it later on. There's no satisfaction ultimately in sinning. Yes? Exactly. What scripture is that again? Numbers 32:23. Your sin will find you out. Be sure your sin will find you out. You sin against God, it will find you out. You're not going to keep it covered because God always knows it, and it will always come out. And so the sin that is committed has a sweetness to the individual at the beginning, but then there are consequences that must be faced later on in this life to a certain degree, and certainly in the next, if a person does not repent and receive salvation. So the short life of dishonest gain is seen here in verse 17. Look at verse 18. Plans are established by counsel. By wise counsel, wage war. So having plans is good to seek counsel. And we talk about seeking counsel from those who are wise in their understanding to make proper decisions. And by wise counsel, wage war. And I don't want to get into a political discussion about this, but some people think that our president's decision to go to war was unwise. However you feel about that, it wasn't a rash decision he made. He weighed the evidence and through counsel decided not only the evidence that came in from his advisors, but advisors of other countries, that the individual over there, Saddam Hussein, was a threat. Now, whether he was or not, he was presenting to the world that he was a threat, and he's regretting that now in more ways than one. The point is, it was not something that was rash as far as a quick decision. He was given opportunity after opportunity to come clean with the world concerning his intentions. And whether he had what he claimed he had or not, it doesn't matter. The point is, when a person is going to make a serious decision, verse 18, like going to war, that's a serious decision, to take a nation into war. That should be done with counsel. So a king here should seek wise counsel before they make a decision that is going to have severe consequences. That'll come into play in verse 25, as we'll see this a little bit later on in the chapter. Look at verse 19. He who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with one who flatters with his lips. A talebearer, one who reveals secrets. There are certain secrets that should not be revealed. They are told in confidence. The person is entrusting the person that they're talking to with a secret. And a talebearer is one who will bear the tale of what is being told in secret. And that's an untrustworthy individual. So therefore, he says you don't associate with the one who flatters with the lips. Flattery is basically false praise or false words in which you compliment someone. And so it's basically dealing with an untrustworthy individual, and you don't associate with that individual. Verse 20, whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in deep darkness. The lamp here referring to their life. Under the Old Testament, there was severe consequences in cursing father or mother. Look at Exodus chapter 21. Exodus chapter 21. And verse 17. He who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 9. Leviticus chapter 20. And verse 9. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He who curses his father or his mother, his blood shall be upon him. So under the old law, if you do this, you curse father or mother, you were not protected by the law to do so as in freedom to express your feelings or freedom of speech or have your rights. You were killed. By God's law, you were put to death. That's how God views children who would speak against their parents. Now think about how many children today in our society would be dead if our law was the same as the law of Moses, and if the law of Moses was still in effect today. It might be the case that a lot of us would be dead right now that are in this assembly to a certain extent. So God takes very seriously the respect of children towards their mother and father, the respect of their authority, and the respecting them and allowing them to be the ones who are in charge. there is a severe consequence in doing that, because if a person does not respect father and mother, who are the first God-given authoritative figures in their life, then that's going to affect the rest of their life later on, especially when it comes towards God. And God will put their lamp out in deep darkness. The Bible describes hell as being outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. So it starts at home, and the respect has to start there. Look at verse 21. An inheritance gained hastily at the beginning will not be blessed at the end. Someone who wants an inheritance hastily at the very first, and it's out of a sense of greed, they're not going to be blessed in the end. And I'm reminded of Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son. What did he want? He wanted his inheritance. He wanted the portion of his inheritance from his father right then. What did he do? He went out and wasted it. Had to come back to the father with nothing. And so usually people who are very greedy and needing an inheritance hastily are the ones who will not be blessed at the end. If you're entitled to an inheritance, it will come in time. But don't be hasty in trying to receive it. Verse 22. Do not say, I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord, and He will save you. The attitude of taking vengeance ourselves. The attitude of seeking our own vengeance. And Solomon is saying, do not say that. Do not say, I will recompense evil or repay evil. We find that in the teachings of the New Testament. You look at Romans chapter 12, you find that very concept. Romans chapter 12, beginning verse 17, Romans 12 and verse 17, repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourself, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him drink. For in doing so, you heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Therefore, it's not our place to repay or take vengeance on someone. Wait on the Lord. Let Him handle it, and He can handle it perfectly. He'll handle the situation a lot better than we could. And so we are to let God repay those who have done evil towards us. Look at verse 23. Diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord, and dishonest scales are not good. We've seen this several times, haven't we? The emphasis that's being placed on dishonesty. Dishonesty in weights. They're an abomination, the diverse weights. Weights that are not as they should be. When they would weigh something, they would have certain weights that weighed a certain amount to get a balance on a scale. And if they did not have the right type of weight on the objects they would put on one side, the item would weigh differently, and therefore they could cheat their customer out of money. Dishonesty. So that's an abomination to God. Dishonest scales are not good. Therefore, we see over and over again emphasized, we are to be honest in our business dealings. Verse 24, a man's steps are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his way? A man has to be directed by God. God has to give guidance. Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 23 goes along with this perfectly. Jeremiah 10 and verse 23, O Lord, I know the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his own steps. We have to have the Lord to guide us. The man's steps are of the Lord. We cannot understand. There's no way we could know how to please God if it were not for God revealing it in His Word. We are clueless when it comes to that. Therefore, He has to tell us. He has to give us the information, and we must act on that information. And when we do that, that's called faith. Look at verse 25. It is a snare for a man to devote rashly something as holy, and afterwards to reconsider his vow. Can you think of an example in the Old Testament where that happened? Jephthah. In the book of Judges, turn to the book of Judges. This is a perfect example of what Solomon is talking about. Judges chapter 11. Beginning in verse 30. Look at verse 29. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh. He passed through Mizpah and Gilead, and from Manasseh to Gilead he advanced towards the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, verse 31, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it as a burnt offering. So if you deliver this into my hands, deliver the people of Ammon, if you give me victory, when I go back home, the first thing that comes out of the door, I'm going to offer as a burnt offering. Verse 32, so Jephthah advanced towards the people of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands, and he defeated them from Aor and as far as Minnith, 20 cities, and Abel Kermim with a great slaughter. Thus the people of Ammon were subdued under the children of Israel. Look at verse 34. When Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing, and she was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he tore his clothes and said, alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You are among those who trouble me, for I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it. The first thing that came out of his house was his daughter. Now he made a rash vow. You deliver them into my hands. First thing comes out of my house, I am going to sacrifice. The first thing that came out of his house was his daughter. His only daughter, his only child. Verse 36. So she said to him, my father, if you have given your word to the Lord, do not do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, because the Lord has avenged you on your enemies, the people of Ammon. Then she said to her father, let this thing be done to me. Let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my friends and I. And he said, go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her friends and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. And it was so at the end, verse 39, of 2 months, that she returned to her father and he carried out his vow with her, which he had vowed. She knew no man, and it became a custom in Israel, verse 40, that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. So, verse 39, he performed the vow. The question that people go back and forth on, did he take her and kill her? Or was the vow that she knew no man, that she became a perpetual virgin and did not marry? Based upon some conclude that Jephthah went ahead and took and killed her and burned her as a sacrifice, I don't think that would be the case, because God has never accepted human sacrifice. So I believe that the vow was modified so that he could sacrifice her, but what did he sacrifice? Her ability to become a wife and to give birth to children, which was something that was very much looked down on in that society. The point is this, back to Proverbs 20 and verse 25. It's a snare, it is a trap for a man to devote rashly something as holy. You don't make a rash decision and then go back on it. Afterwards, he reconsiders his vow. Now, put that in the realm of today. People make rash vows to the Lord. Lord, you get me out of this situation, I'll start going to church. I'll give money to the Lord's church. I'll become devoted. I'll become dedicated. I had a relative of mine that got in trouble with the law, and when they got out of their jail sentence, he wanted to become a preacher. He was going to go to preacher school. He wanted to learn the Bible, and that lasted probably for a month. And after about a month or two, he stopped even attending church service. While he was in church service, while he was in jail, he was going to turn his life around, give it to the Lord, even wanted to preach. But when things settled down and he got out of trouble, he went back on that vow, so to speak. Now he's not even a faithful Christian at all. Hadn't been for years. The rash decisions that people make, and they don't really have an intention of carrying them through. People sometimes, before they get into situations, they make a decision. I want to be baptized. Okay, they're baptized, but then they don't follow through with the commitment of being a faithful Christian. So it becomes a snare to them. And Judges 11, verses 30 through 40, the example of Jephthah is a good example of that. Any questions or comments about that? Verse 26, a wise king sifts out the wicked and brings the threshing wheel over them. Here a wise king, a wise ruler, is going to sift out of society wicked people and bring them to justice, and is going to punish them. And that is the job of government, of those who are in authority. You read Romans chapter 13. Their job is to govern the country, those who are in authority, and to bring punishment upon those who are lawbreakers. And sifting out the wicked out of society is what they should be doing. Verse 27, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching out the inner depths of his heart. Here you have the spirit of a man, referring to our soul or our spirit. It's the lamp. It's the life force within us. Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 1 tells us that God forms the spirit within man. Each person, when they come into existence, God forms a spirit within them. When you take all of the teaching of the Bible, since the Bible teaches, I think it's very safe to conclude and very reasonable to conclude that God forms the spirit of a human being within them at conception. And therefore, that is their soul in the image of God. And the person's soul is what searches all the inner depths of his heart. No one knows you better than yourself except for God. But as far as humans are concerned, no one knows you better than you know yourself. And therefore, we have the ability to search the innermost depths of our heart. Animals don't have that ability. They don't sit around and contemplate their place in the universe. They exist on instinct. They are programmed by God since the initial creation, so many thousands of years ago. They have a programming in them, and they react according to that programming. And you can train animals to do certain things, but it's still based within the programming that God placed within it. Because we are in the image of God, we can contemplate the inner depths of our heart and our relationship with God. That is unique to human beings. Look at verse 28. Mercy and truth preserve the king. And by loving kindness he upholds his throne. If a king is going to rule, it must be by mercy and truth. They always go together. Mercy and truth. And loving kindness is by which he upholds his throne. A benevolent ruler. Someone who is truly benevolent. And when I look at this verse, I think of the ultimate king, Christ. Mercy and truth is how he rules. And he, in loving kindness, is on his throne. In fact, Hebrews chapter 1 makes that very clear. Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 8. Speaking about Jesus Christ, it says, but to the Son he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. Scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions. So Christ, the King, rules in mercy and truth and loving kindness. Righteousness is by which he rules over the kingdom, which is the church. Verse 29, the glory of young men is their strength, the splendor of old men is their gray head. Here we see that what is impressive to the young, what the young glories in is their strength, their abilities. Why do you have younger people playing football, playing basketball, running track, but then as they get older and they start getting gray hair, they become the coaches? It's because they can't do that anymore. Their bodies won't let them. They have to retire from those things. However, they have now wisdom that they've accumulated in years of experience, in which the splendor of those who are older have in their gray head. The gray hair that they have is nothing to be ashamed of. That is supposed to be a show of wisdom. Not always in every case. There's some very foolish, gray-headed people in the world. However, when they're a godly individual, their glory is in their youth, but their splendor is in their old age. And so you have a person who has, from their youth, become a Christian. They're living the Christian life. They have the strength to do things that they won't have the strength to do later on. Then in years to come, they accumulate wisdom, and that gray hair shows that they have had years of experience in serving the Lord. That's why men who are chosen to be shepherds of the church are called elders. They're not called youngers. Elders in the church. That denotes age and spiritual maturity. Elders in the church. Look at verse 30. Blows that hurt cleanses away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. How would someone being punished with blows or stripes, how would that cleanse their evil? Talking about someone being punished here. Gets their attention. They think twice about what they're doing. There are certain places in the world where people are actually caned or punished with a cane for doing certain crimes. I think it was Singapore. There was an American over there acting very foolish, spray painting some stuff on graffiti on the walls. It became international news because they took him and they caned him. And some people in America think that's cruel and unusual. I can almost guarantee you he won't go over to Singapore again and start putting graffiti on walls, despite what the crybaby liberals think. I can almost take that to the bank that he won't do that. Because when you inflict punishment on someone, that cleanses away evil. It's something that causes the inner depths of the heart to reconsider their ways. That's why when a society stops punishing evil, evil starts running rampant. And that's exactly what we have today. You don't have it in the schools hardly anymore, even though there are isolated places. When I was growing up in school, they would paddle people. If you got set outside the classroom for misbehaving, the principal would walk around with a paddle. You could hear the swats echoing in the hall. And I've heard that happens in a few places, but not very many places. So that's something that causes people to think about their life. And you make punishment harsh on people for crimes, crack down on them, they're going to think twice about committing them. And the problem is we have these colleges and these universities putting out liberal lawyers with a liberal mindset that turn into liberal judges who allow these criminals to get off with just a slap on the wrist. And it is something that is a problem in our society. I mean, it does not stop crime because people are going to commit crime. There are evil people who are going to do it. So it's not to stop crime altogether. It's to punish those who do and to cause people to think twice about it. What did they used to do with horse thieves? They used to hang them. That's a pretty severe punishment for stealing horses. And it was done publicly.
You know, too, it will deter crime because, like a horse thief, when people come together and solve it, you know, it makes them think twice now whether they would want to. You're not just breaking that one person.
And you know the parents, that's a good point. Those parents would take those children out there and you say, look at that man dangling from that rope. If you do what he did, you'll be dangling from a rope. You do that, and don't you think that made an impression on people? It's not going to stop crime altogether because some people are bent on doing wicked. It doesn't matter the consequence. However, it is a deterrent. Exactly. When God struck Ananias and Sapphira dead for lying. Lying. People don't think lying is a big deal, but they lied to God, and it says they struck them. God struck them dead. It says great fear came upon all the people. When you punish evildoers, you know, and give them the punishment that they deserve, you have a safer society. Why do people have to be concerned about certain individuals moving into their neighborhood, sexual offenders, registered sex offenders, moving in? You got to have a database of all these people. Why are they out in society to begin with? We wouldn't have to worry about how close a a sex offender could live close to a school or where they would live and be concerned about where they are in a neighborhood if they were punished properly. And so the jail system is full of repeat offenders. And many crimes are committed by people who have been convicted of crime and have undergone a little bit of punishment. Then they're released. They go out and commit more crime. And the purpose of jail is really not to rehabilitate people. It's to punish them. Now, there are advantages of being in situations like that wherein people can go in and teach them the gospel. I've had opportunities of doing that myself. And you teach them the gospel and hope that it makes an impression on them. But we're living in a society in which no one wants to punish. Children aren't getting punished for their behavior and they're misbehaving. Therefore, that's going to spill over into society. Got an email the other day from this baby center that I started getting emails from when I was tracking Jennifer's pregnancy with Maya. And it tracks, certain characteristics and certain behavior each month, that your child is developing. And it's talking about this month about how children misbehave and how to handle them when they throw fits. And the advice that these experts give concerning how to handle a child that throws a fit in a grocery store is to stop what you're doing when the child is throwing a fit, pick them up, and take them outside, leave your basket, take them outside to your vehicle or go sit on a bench and let them throw their fit, and then get it out of their system. Then take the child and go back into the store and put them back in the basket. Then if they throw a fit again, you pick them up, you take them out. Who's controlling the situation there? Well, I have experienced the philosophy my parents had concerning what you do with children. And that is, you let the child control the situation. They don't want to be in that store, they'll throw a fit and they'll learn, hey, this is what I get to do. I'll get to go to the van, I'll get to go to the car. I'll just throw a fit and mom and daddy will take me out of the store. Instead of giving the child something to cry about. Which is an abuse. It's attention getting. You want to cry? Let me give you something here to cry about. And that's the whole concept of spanking that child, getting that child's attention. That's becoming pretty much taboo. Can you imagine 50 years ago that they would be coming up with laws or people trying to put laws on the books that say you can't spank your children? You can't do that, but two men who want to get married, let's make it lawful for them to get married. What is happening to our society? I can tell you what's happening. We're departing from this. Slowly but surely, we're departing from this book. And therefore, as a result of the moral decay in our society, we're going to have more and more criminals who don't fear the cops and don't fear punishment. I mean, you can just, and it goes back to what we're looking at here in verse 30. There are so many laws to protect people who are running from the cops. You see these car chases all the time with the cops behind them, and they're just mocking the cops because the cops can't make any type of move on them because then the criminal will turn around and sue the police. And then some lawyer will take that and sue the police for stopping this criminal. I can go on and on about that. But it shows how chaotic our society is becoming, in which you're almost hearing on a daily basis someone going in a store, going someplace, and just shooting up the place. That used to be a rare occurrence about 20 or 30 years ago. Now it's almost weekly. You know what the problem was in schools 100 years ago? getting up without asking permission, chewing gum, talking in class. Those were your major issues 100 years ago. Today, you could go to school and get killed by someone who has been bullied or something. Guns. There are certain schools in certain districts that have to have metal detectors. And it's because of the breakdown of discipline. Verse 30 makes it very clear. If you get back to punishing people for their crimes, and the crime fits the punishment, blows that hurt cleanse away evil. Look at that. Blows that hurt. You got to make it hurt. Blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. When our government gets back to hurting people, we're going to see a turnaround in the problems that we're having. Does that not go back to the whole issue of getting information out of terrorists, the waterboarding? We don't want to hurt the people who want to kill us. Think about the backwards thinking of our society. These terrorists, if they got half a chance, would kill us. But we want to make things comfortable for them. We don't want to make them uncomfortable to try to get information out of them that could save American lives. But give them half a chance, they'd kill us. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. It's a passage that comes to mind. And that's what we're facing. Okay, next week we will look at chapter 21, be studying and reading chapter 21, and we will be looking at that. Thank you very much.